Today is a solemn and significant day. With today's guilty plea, Mr. Mangione has accepted full responsibility for the death of Brian Thompson.
Breaking news out of federal court in Manhattan. Accused assassin Luigi Mangione enters guilty pleas to charges related to the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
This was not a spontaneous act of violence. It was deliberate, calculated, and premeditated.
The crime that shocked the nation and robbed a family of a husband and father. We're at federal court with all of the details.
On the morning of December 4th, 2024, a man in a black hooded jacket stood on a quiet Midtown Manhattan sidewalk and waited. He wasn't waiting for a bus. He wasn't waiting for a friend. He was waiting for the CEO of the largest health insurance company in America to walk toward the New York Hilton for an investor conference. Minutes later, Brian Thompson was dead on the pavement, shot twice from behind with a handgun fitted with a silencer, and the man who pulled the trigger was gone before police even arrived. Nearly 2 years later, that same man stood in a federal courtroom and told the world, in his own words, exactly how he did it. His name is Luigi Mangione, and on this day inside a Manhattan federal courthouse, he pleaded guilty, not to a lesser charge, not as part of some negotiated deal. He pleaded guilty open to every single count in the federal indictment against him, admitting on the record that he stalked and killed Brian Thompson in cold blood.
Nearly 2 years after a masked man wearing all black pulled out a gun on West 54th Street outside of the Hilton Hotel and shot the CEO of the nation's largest health insurance company, the man accused of committing the crime, Luigi Mangione, has now pleaded guilty to charges in the federal indictment, and he admits that he stalked and killed Brian Thompson. Cameras were not allowed inside the courtroom when all of this went down, so to help us understand exactly what happened,
To understand how staggering this moment was, you have to go back to who Luigi Mangione was supposed to be, a young man from a well-off family, Ivy League educated, seemingly on a normal trajectory. Then chronic back pain entered his life, and with it, a years-long battle against a health insurance system he came to believe was designed to fail people like him. That frustration, prosecutors say, curdled into something far darker than grievance. It became a plan, and the plan was methodical. Mangione is accused of learning that UnitedHealthcare was holding an investor conference in New York, so he allegedly impersonated a wealthy investor, claiming to control tens of billions of dollars just to get insiders to hand him the exact time and location of where Thompson would be. In court, he admitted it himself and made a chilling observation while doing it. The investor relations team responded to his fake pitch almost instantly. Faster, he said, than an actual insurance claim had ever been answered.
He was just getting frustrated with the entire healthcare system. And so he knew that United Healthcare was holding an investor conference. And one thing I found very eye-opening was that he posed as an investor with the firm, saying that he had $50 billion worth of money to invest. And he made this kind of quip, Anjanette, about how they were quick to respond to him with the information that he would need in order to track down where this investor conference was taking place, at what time. He said he got a faster response than when he ever...
Whether you find that ironic or infuriating, it tells you everything about how deliberate this was. This wasn't rage boiling over on a street corner. This was engineering. Investigators say Mangione built his own weapon, a 3D printed ghost gun untraceable by design. He allegedly traveled to New York with that gun and a clear intention.
Motivation behind it, that he had been enduring years of pain and things of that sort. So he had posed as an investor. He received that immediate response, made a gun from a 3D printer, traveled to New York City, and he said that he had intentions to shoot Brian Thompson. He admitted that plain out in court, and that was kind of the moment we started to see his wife get a little emotional. His family is kind of looking at him as he's reading this, and you can't help but think that they have to feel this type of anger, possibly this hatred, as he's just callously talking about the crime.
And on the morning of the conference, prosecutors say he tracked Thompson's movements, positioned himself along the route Thompson was expected to take, and waited. When the moment came, he allegedly opened fire from behind. 2 shots, close range. And in a detail prosecutors specifically highlighted in court, surveillance footage reportedly shows Brian Thompson turning around between the first and second shot, meaning by the time the fatal round was fired, Thompson may have seen the face of the man killing him. Then Mangione fled the scene, according to authorities, disappearing into the city while Thompson lay dying on the sidewalk, surrounded by ordinary commuters just starting their day. For 5 days, Mangione was a ghost. Then, in Altoona, Pennsylvania, an alert citizen recognized him from released photos and flagged local police. Officers say they found him carrying a 9mm pistol, a notebook, and a cell phone that would later become key pieces of evidence. It wasn't luck that caught him. Investigators say it was 5 relentless days of forensic work, surveillance analysis, and public tips that led straight to that Pennsylvania street. Now fast forward to this hearing. Reporters allowed inside describe a courtroom thick with tension. Mangione entered not in cuffs, but visibly restrained at the ankles, his expression unreadable.
No, Anjanette, he was not handcuffed. Actually, it's funny enough that you say that because when he first came inside the courtroom, his hands were actually behind his back. So I at first assumed he was handcuffed from the back, but then as he's kind of approaching the defense's table, we see that that's not the case. But we do believe that he was shackled around his feet, especially given the way that he was walking, kind of posturing himself as he walked over to the defense table. So Anjanette, today was a very interesting hearing. I think a lot of us were highly anticipating that there was going to.
And for the first time since his arrest, Brian Thompson's family was in that room too, including his widow, sitting just feet away from the man accused of taking her husband from her.
Courtroom. It felt a little bit tense because Brian Thompson's family was also inside that courtroom today. This is the first time that we are seeing them. They traveled across state lines, we believe, in order to get to the courthouse today. So we knew that it was going to be something big that was going to be happening. But as we all know now, it was going to be that guilty plea in which he pleaded guilty to his 2 counts in the indictment in the federal case. As far as the state's case goes,
the judge walked Mangione through the standard battery of questions. Was he thinking clearly? Did he understand his rights? Was anyone forcing this plea? He answered calmly until asked whether he'd used any drugs or alcohol recently. There was a pause. He glanced toward his attorneys before admitting he'd taken a sleeping pill 2 nights earlier. The judge, apparently satisfied he was competent, moved forward.
Any judge would, Judge Garnett, whether or not Luigi Mangione was clear-headed, whether or not he understood his rights, whether he was waiving his rights. And then the judge required Luigi Mangione to allocute and say what he did.
And it was interesting, Anjanette, because, as the judge is reading off just, these questions on whether or not he's of sound mind, there was this moment where he's answering yes repeatedly, but then he's asked whether or not he recently had drugs or alcohol. And he takes kind of a moment. He looks at both of the Agnifilos who are sitting right beside each other. And then he kind of blurts out that he had taken sleeping pills about 2 days.
Then came the moment the entire courtroom had been waiting for. Mangione was required to allocute, to describe in his own words exactly what he did. And according to those present, he read from a prepared statement almost clinically, with none of the emotion you might expect from a man admitting to murder.
It was interesting, Anjanette, too, to see him kind of, again, talk about the crime where he was reading from a script. So it wasn't a situation where he was speaking with a lot of emotion. He was just kind of reading it as if it was maybe an essay in college, that type of sort, but just very kind of, like I had mentioned before, just stoically talking about the crime. He stayed seated the entire time.
He described the back pain, the years of frustration with the healthcare system, the fake investor scheme, the ghost gun, the ambush. Witnesses say Thompson's widow began quietly wiping away tears as he spoke.
Or what it was, but even in terms of when Luigi Mangione was speaking about the crime itself, we saw Brian Thompson's widow start to dry away some tears that were coming. I can only imagine how emotional it was to just hear him talk about it just so stoically in a way. But for the most part, there wasn't an outward kind of emotion expressed, but more so you could feel that all the family was very tight-knit together. It was probably very jarring for them to see Luigi Mangione.
And then the line that will follow Luigi Mangione for the rest of his life, he closed his statement by looking up and saying, "Simply, I knew what I was doing." 4 words, no excuses buried inside
shooting,
them.
and then it just ended from there.
Elizabeth, Luigi Mangione, in a direct quote from the courtroom, wrapped up his statement by saying, "I knew what I was doing." So he made it very clear that this was premeditated, that he made the ghost gun, the 3D gun. He made it himself, that he communicated by email with the investor relations department at UnitedHealthcare. So that was a key part of this proceeding today, because the judge...
No claim of a blackout, no insanity defense hiding in the phrasing. Just a flat, undeniable admission of premeditation, delivered in the same room as the family he shattered. Outside the courtroom, prosecutors made their intentions brutally clear. The U.S. Attorney's Office said there was no plea agreement, no concessions, and no ceiling on what punishment they'll pursue.
And I think we need to be very clear with the viewers here. This was not a plea deal. There was no plea agreement. Luigi Mangione walked into court and he pleaded guilty to the 2 interstate stalking charges in the indictment. And those 2 charges basically state that he traveled through interstate commerce across state lines.
They're seeking life in prison without
Then
parole.
on the other side of the courtroom, we, of course, have the government saying that they will pursue life in prison without parole for Luigi Mangione. There was a press conference, and we're going to get to that very shortly and play that for the viewers, where they said they will seek. The U.S. Attorney James McDonald said he will seek the harshest punishment.
In their sentencing letter, prosecutors requested a range between roughly 25 and 30 years at minimum, but stressed the judge isn't bound by that number. She could go all the way to the maximum the law allows.
Yeah, and the government is only asking in their letter, as far as sentencing recommendations, 292 months to 365 months in prison in terms of punishment. So just doing some quick math, that's what, in the 25 to 30 year range. And now that the defense is trying to throw out the state charges, it seems like even though it's at the judge's discretion, she can definitely send Luigi Mangione to have a longer sentence. But in terms of the possibilities, it seems like maybe instead of a life sentence, a life sentence without the possibility of parole, that there might still be that possibility he only gets 25, 30 years.
Meanwhile, Mangione's legal team is already working an entirely different battlefield, New York State Court, where he still faces second-degree murder and multiple weapons charges tied to the same killing. His attorneys are arguing that convicting him twice, once federally and once at the state level, for the exact same act violates New York's double jeopardy protections.
He's been treated differently from every other defendant charged with this offense in New York. However, thankfully, New York law does not allow this. New York law does not permit a person to be prosecuted and punished twice for the exact same crime under a statute that governs successive prosecutions. It's also known as the double jeopardy law. Today's guilty plea triggers this statute, and we just filed our motion in state court explaining why the state charges must be dismissed under New York's double jeopardy protections.
Manhattan's district attorney isn't backing down either, vowing to keep pursuing the state case regardless.
In a statement, a spokesperson wrote, "Since December 2024, the Manhattan DA's office has been tirelessly preparing to pursue a trial conviction in New York State Supreme Court for the alleged cold-blooded murder of Brian Thompson. We are encouraged that Mr. Thompson's family received a measure of accountability today. While federal sentencing is pending, we are prepared to litigate the defense motions. The Manhattan DA's office remains committed to seeking justice for Mr. Thompson and his family." The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jamie McDonald, says he will ask that Luigi Mangione spend the rest of his life behind bars.
So here's where this leaves us. A man who spent years building a public narrative around corporate greed and a broken healthcare system just stood up in federal court and, in his own words, confirmed he stalked and executed a husband and father in broad daylight. Whatever grievance drove him there, whatever sympathy his online supporters want to project onto him, the law was clear today, and so was Mangione himself. This wasn't a message, it was an activism.
But we live in a civilized society governed by the rule of law. We debate, we disagree, we protest. We do not commit murder. No grievance, political belief, or ideological cause can ever justify murder. There can be no celebrity in assassination. Any person who celebrates, encourages, or excuses actions like these is fundamentally wrong. Mangione attempted to send a public message through violence, but the message that emerges today is very different. Violence is not a legitimate instrument to promote any political or social message. And those who resort to violence.
It was a calculated killing, and now the only question left is how many decades he'll spend paying for it.
Proud for bringing us to this day. And to those who idolize Luigi Mangione, I say this: violence is not a cause, murder is not a message, and a killer is certainly not a hero.
Sentencing is set for December 18th. If you want to see how the story ends, subscribe now, because when that gavel comes down, we'll be there breaking it down for you first.